welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with Buddy Sotello Esquire and Dr. Mike Lano. And we have a very special guest again, a repeat offender, shall we say, on this program. And all the way from El Salvador, we'll get a different coast in this week. And from south of the border, Javier Ojst, who also is a writer for Pro Wrestling Stories, right?
Yes, Pro Wrestling Stories, and our coast is the Pacific.
Yes, we share the Pacific, but a different part of it.
Yeah, different part of it.
You get all our pollution that we flush down the bay. You know, it winds up down in El Salvador. But
depends on the current. I wouldn't say that, but it depends on how the currents are moving.
Yes. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. So
you know that Lanny Papa, who I've known since he and I were both kids in the 70s, he moved to Uruguay. I don't know
that's
how.
Right. We interviewed him from Uruguay. No, we had a chance to interview him.
Oh, he just now moved to Uruguay because he was in Ecuador, right?
Yeah, you're right. He was in Ecuador when we interviewed him.
Unless he just moved to Uruguay.
Yeah, that's the address that I just got. So maybe it was
because he was in Ecuador. Okay.
And so he's been upping his Spanish, which is perfecto. And I mean, I never got that far South America, but I shot a ton in Mexico City at both the famous arena Coliseo y Arena Mexico, and also some of the other ones, and shot in Acapulco, and pretty much all over the place. Obviously Tijuana, AAA's Triple Mania shows at the that fantastic bull ring. That such a big deal. This was in Conan's heyday. But I've got a number of topics. I know we're going to be all over the map. I was going to bring up and ask you guys if you thought the situation with women in the biz has been any better. We're still not getting any answers, which is insulting to the audience on where Sasha Banks is anywhere in the world. And that's a little bit upsetting. So, and the fact that they had the hot shot, that's the result and reason why they had the hot shot and bring Becky Lynch in, because really it was only supposed to be, according to my sources at WWE, just Brock's, not two surprises in one night. At worst, they were going to bring Becky on Raw the next night to have that surprise, and pop the audience. A couple of things on this Heels show, and I hope to get some of the producers and maybe Stephen Amell on. This is the episode 3 tonight on Starz cable channel, and Heels show I think was called Dusty Finish. So each episode is named.
Well, no spoilers. I haven't watched the last 2 episodes, so please, no spoilers.
I don't get. Your brother was absolutely right. I mean, I love beautiful women. I got no problem with topless beautiful women, but it seems like the valet, every single one of the 3 episodes. So this isn't a spoiler. This is a delivery. Has been topless, and even the promoter's wife on episode 2, topless. So they're doing it.
Way to get ratings. If you're not going to give blood, you got to get sex in there.
Well, tonight, CM Punk plays the out-of-towner brought to pop the attendance. So that's another reason to watch. And Stephen Amell, very close friends with Cody Rhodes. So that's why he's there. I do want to plug, and I want to say. Hopefully Javier can get it on Fight Network and some of the other platforms. The Empower, Mickey James Empower, all women.
NWA, yeah.
There's some fantastic matches. I'm not going to give any results. The Melina title challenge to Deonna Purrazzo, excellent. Also, of course, Camille and Layla Hirsch, which I thought, all the matches were great. That one was the top one. Most emotional moment was Kong in the ring, retiring with Gail Kim. You really need to go out and see that clip. It was a very big deal. Mm-hmm. And I was just impressed with the whole thing. That does not appear to be the same space because it's huge in comparison to the much tinier Wrestling at the Chase. This was Saturday TV in St. Louis when I went there and shot quite a few times. Every time I went in to St. Louis to shoot at the Keel, this was Sam Munchnick's TV venue with Larry Matisic doing the commentary. And first Joe Garagiola, famous Joe Garagiola, the baseball player, and then his brother Mickey doing ring announcing, etc. So it's within the same Chase Hotel venue. I don't think it's the exact same space where Muchnick's Classic TV and later Larry Maddox's promotion when Sam retired was, but very historic. Flair stuff on tonight's pay-per-view. So you should watch both of them, the 73rd anniversary show and then, of course, Empower. So get the package deal. It's really worth supporting. And that also just, I've said this for the last couple of weeks, and then I'll see what Javier and Russ want to say about this. I think we're in a new era of promoters like Billy Corgan for the NWA, like Tony Khan for AEW, who grew up as fans, but also just love the biz. I mean, Evan, I brought Billy Corgan to the old show I did with Evan, who we hope to have next month back with us, Legends Radio, and for an hour and a half we talked, and you can.
Hey, we're surviving without him. We're able to put together some fun shows.
I like
Don't worry, Russell. You're still going to have your spot. It's
yeah.
The show has you and Evan on the title. You'll be okay.
Yes, I think so. As long as I know the password, he hasn't changed the password for me to log into the.
Just don't block me.
No, of course not. You're a regular anyway, Javier. So, but it's nice to see promoters who are human beings, and I hope that trend continues, as opposed to Stanford, shall we say, that we've had for so long. And I mean, just the sheer fact, and then I'll throw it to you guys. Nakamura's theme song and Prince Devitt. Now I can't even think of his the name he's using in WWE. But I still call him Prince Devitt. But Finn Balor. The fans kind of sing along and get into those songs. But AEW, almost everybody's theme song, whether it's Jungle Boy, obviously Jericho is the pinnacle. CM Punk now. People get really emotional and into that stuff. Jurassic Express's video is outstanding. And where else are you going to see Venus flytraps snapping shut and eating flies? But on that one, and it just goes to what I'm saying about these promoters that love it. They are having the most success, and we're doing the most, or a lot of people are talking about them, and that's fantastic. And hopefully maybe Mickey James can promote more shows in concert with Billy Corgan. So Javier, do you follow all the news? Now, I know there's wrestling in many countries in South America, as there is in the Philippines, as there is in India. That's very cool, particularly the women in India. They're the main stars there. So there's wrestling all over the planet. I've covered a lot of it. I just haven't gone as far south. But what are some countries down your way? Like, for example, does El Salvador, does it have some wrestling leagues? Not just WWE coming down to bring a tour down, but real hometown wrestling.
Yeah, we have a couple of promotions. I think the most stable, established promotions is called Arena Gladiadores, and there's another one, and I'll name them because they call themselves Triple C. Seems like it might be a playoff Triple A. But I think the style of the wrestling here in El Salvador, it tries to be more like the Mexican lucha libre style, more so than the classic American style. But the wrestling here needs a lot of help. It needs sponsors. It needs people to infuse money. It needs a lot of help. It's a very from the ground up project that has never. I think the peak of wrestling here in El Salvador might have been late 70s and early 80s, and then the Civil War hit here and hit all kinds of industries hard, including wrestling. But I think the 79, 80, 81 were the years where wrestling here was we would get a lot of Mexican talent. We would get people from Colombia. We'd get people from Guatemala. Guatemala and El Salvador has always had a very close relationship with the wrestling. In terms of wrestling fans, I'd say people here pretty much, if they follow wrestling or if they did at some point, they know about WWE. But after the Attitude Era, I think it really, really died down here in terms of fan support. So people here will watch soccer, UFC, boxing, basketball, but pro wrestling here has a very limited audience. At least I don't perceive it as being a strong a lot of people that follow it right now. There's nothing that not too many people who capture the minds and imagination of the either fans or previous fans, because the whole thing with and I'll finish with this the whole with this comment. The whole thing with wrestling here, the lucha, I think people go with, why am I going to watch this? This isn't real. And it's not really the people's fault. I find it more as how wrestling is presented. If people here would have more access to maybe New Japan Pro Wrestling and that style, I think people here could really get into that. But when they see a guy in Raw or SmackDown and they're in the middle of the ring for 20 minutes just talking, believe me, they change the channel immediately, And I can't defend that. I'm like, I'd put it on at some point at a restaurant or at a bar, and people like, come on, put something else on. These guys are just talking, and they change it, So unfortunately,
is it a necessity for the local promotions, or could other platforms work, like simply having an internet show, or how are the local promotions? How do they promote themselves? Do they utilize TV, or is that sort of passé now?
Not TV anymore. Mostly internet, Facebook. That's how they promote themselves, word of mouth. But again, I think the biggest thing that stops wrestling from advancing here in El Salvador is people want to see something that is more realistic and less showy, like the WWE style.
But in the in the late 70s, or around 78 on, didn't the Brazos y Villanos, didn't they come in from CMLL Luderoth?
I'm not sure if they came to El Salvador, and I'm very familiar with the Brazos and the Villanos rivalry, huge rivalry in Mexico. They might have gone to Guatemala, but not sure about El Salvador.
Because they're just such a plethora of amazing talent that people don't really talk about. Matematico, all of these guys, Raul and Carlos Mata, who really, had their greatest success, say, in Los Angeles, or Ray Mendoza, who's a total legend, would come in. Now, the photo behind me, people have asked, this was
Máscaras and Bull, what's his name?
Apache Bull Ramos.
Apache Ramos, yeah, exactly.
See, this was when we had a territory war. That Russ hasn't even heard of this. There were many great territory wars I got to cover. Early 70s till about 75, Dick the Bruiser versus Sheik in Detroit. The Montreal, Rougeos versus Vachon, Grand Prix versus Lutte International. Atlanta, Annie Gunkel, the widow of Ray Gunkel, taking on the entire NWA, booked by Cowboy Belle Watts, and she beat him for nearly 2 years in terms of attendance. But in LA, for just 2 shows, Vern Gagne teamed up with the owner of the Lakers, the Kings, and the LA Forum, the legendary Jack Kent Cooke, promoted 2 AWA shows. On top of that first show was
the aide for Washington football team, Jack Kent Cooke, the Redskins.
Later on, but we're talking 1968. So Vern had himself defending the AWA title against Dick the Bruiser heel still at the time, and Lou Thez against Kurt Hennig's dad, Larry the Axe, the Vachons, a ton of great talent on there. And the Olympic would stack the cards. This wasn't even the main event. Mascaras defeating Bull Ramos in Mask versus Hair. On top was Blassie losing to NWA champion Dory Funk Jr. in a title bid. The opening match was Don Leo Jonathan and Prince. He was called Prince Iakea, but that was King Curtis Iakea and they defeated Ray Stevens and Pat Patterson. That was the opener. That'd be a main event for Roy Shire in San Francisco, and on and on. Danny Hodge came in and defended the junior heavyweight championship, all on one show. So basically, Mike LaBelle, my boss for the LA promotion, was begging for help from Sam Munchnick, and he called on some of the other NWA promoters. Like Sheik was on the very next show. I think it was Sheik against Mascaras. on that one. Anyway, so loaded stuff. That's the photo behind me. Bull Ramos getting his hair shaved and fantastic heel. He was another guy who in and out a couple times in Mexico, wrestled all across the U.S. The very last match at the old Madison Square Garden, and they closed it down and opened the new one like a year and a half later. But the very last match was Bruno defending the Tri-WF title against Bull Ramos. Very last original classic Madison Square Garden. So I will shut up. But I urge you guys, especially Javier, to watch and give me his thoughts on the Heels TV show on Starz cable network, because again tonight CM Punk is on it. The first episode had the big LG, Luke Gallows, was part of the Locker Room wrestling crew. So it's like a guy's true soap opera about the soap opera known as wrestling, and at least
indie, and especially indie feds. That's the bigger deal, is that it's all done from an indie fed perspective. But I wanted to, well, first of all, one thing that, Mike, and maybe for the rest of the listeners, we go a little bit over Javier's background, because he spent some time up here in the Bay Area. So why don't you tell us just a little bit more about who you are and exactly how we're all connected?
Well, I wound up in San Francisco after living in Northern Virginia. In the Northern Virginia area, I worked with they used to be called the Potomac Cannons. That's a minor league baseball team. When I was there, they were the minor league baseball team for the St. Louis Cardinals. Now they changed their name. They're associated with the Washington Nationals. I think they changed their name, but they're with the Nationals now. I wound up in San Francisco. I was teaching English for people who wanted to learn, basically, Hispanics, immigrants.
ESL.
ESL, exactly. That's what you call it, ESL. There's different.
The Mission is one of my favorite places on earth. That's one of the few you can still go and get Lucha Libre magazines. Super.
Oh, really?
Lucha.
I went to the Mission a couple of times, definitely, but I lived more by Japantown, which is a little
right up there.
Different. But I went to one APW show at the Garage. That's what they call that, the APW Garage.
Yeah,
right?
That was the training center.
I went to a chick fight show with cheerleader Melissa. Not with her, of course, but she was on it. I was this close to working with who's the guy who owns Diva Dirt? We've spoken about
Dedrich. That's her husband.
Yeah, Diedrich. Yeah. I had a couple interviews with him. I was this close to helping him out, promote a couple of shows in the Bay Area. We wanted to, he wanted to put out a product that I think focused on the ladies, but he would see, I think he saw Gorilla, what's it called? Pro Wrestling Gorilla over on the, it's
well, PWG's in Los Angeles. What you're talking about?
Pro Wrestling Gorilla, yeah, exactly. That's in Los Angeles. But there was another promotion in the Bay Area where he thought maybe they could be there could be some kind of rivalry there. But
Gabe Ramirez's fed.
What was it called?
Revolution.
Yeah, I think that's Revolution, right?
Yeah, Pro Wrestling Revolution. Yeah.
You're correct. Partnered with Gabe for a while, and then there was apparently a falling out between the two, and he and Melissa moved to Vegas. Mm-hmm. And she books and still works for Stardom, and she's got her own league, and I'm not sure if she's doing Shimmer or Shine, but she was always top main eventer for Shimmer and Shine, and of course in Stardom too. My old boss from Japan, All Japan Women, Rasi Ogawa, that's the genius of him with Stardom, and WWE has pilfered most of the talent from those guys.
And I was this close to working with Mr. Diedrich promoting shows, but I took a step back because I really needed a job where I knew what I was going to be getting month to month, because I had rent, I had a roommate, and I couldn't.
History has played itself out. I think you made the right choice. I think if you look at not that Jason Dedrich is a pauper right now, but he didn't exactly turn the wrestling world on its ear either.
Well, at the time, I really wanted to get into that, but I just needed to have a job where I knew how much I was going to get every month, and I couldn't go by the, well, it depends on how many people you get into the show, and we're going to give you a cut. I couldn't do that, you know, and
Right.
well, I lived in San Francisco. I came back to El Salvador, and I eventually started working writing for Pro Wrestling Stories. It was supposed to be one article. I wanted to write about Silver King, who passed away in the England London, wasn't in London, but it was an England show. And little by little, I just kept on writing, and I'm still writing for them. You know, it's been a lot of fun. You know.
Were you born in El Salvador? Because you said you were.
Yeah, I'm from El Salvador. After the Civil War, we started living in the United States, in the South Florida area. Then I came back to El Salvador, finished my high school. Then I went back to the U.S. and went to school in South Florida at St. Thomas University. And many years later, after working in sports, I started writing for Pro Wrestling Stories, and that's where we're at right now.
Behind you and to your left, it looks like, are those wrestling action figures lined up? What are those?
No,
Star Wars.
the wrestling figures are that way. These are more
That's
like
Star Wars.
That's just like Star Wars. Okay, I couldn't tell. You know, I'm old now. I couldn't see, you know, whether.
The wrestling action figures are like way back in that ring right there.
Very cool. Are you able to watch the I forget what it's called, but it has Baby Yoda, aka the child, that on the Disney Plus.
The Mandalorian.
Yeah, we got it like maybe a year and a half later, but now if someone wants Disney Plus, you can watch it here. But curiously enough, you can't get Peacock here, so you get the WWE Network. You get that old
really.
And I don't subscribe, so I can't tell you what the differences are.
Huh.
They cut the old stuff. You can't just queue up and watch Mid-Atlantic or AWA or I don't know why they only have a few episodes of Georgia Championship and not that much of Mid-Atlantic or Florida. But you could with WWE Network and the on-demand thing. And now with Peacock, it's just like current stuff. You know, really the only stuff I would want to watch on there are old ECW, rewatch them again. You know, stuff that I shot at that I never got to see the very first pay-per-view, for example. I shot at that Living Dangerously, the thing that had the three-way Terry Funk with the ladder and all of that stuff. The main event was Taz Sabu, the huge match, but they don't have all of the classic stuff that I really like. I want to see Billy Graham being interviewed by Marty O'Neill in 1973 AWA, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So these different places that you came to or lived and moved, etc. Did you get to see old time classic wrestling like in Florida? Any Eddie Graham stuff?
Well, I was born in '78.
Okay, you're a little.
So I grew up. Well, the first wrestling I saw was '85, '86. And I watched the tail end of the Florida Championship Wrestling on the UHF dial. It was Kevin Sullivan, the Army of Darkness, and all that craziness. And I saw after WrestleMania 1, I was between WrestleMania 1 and 2. That's when I started watching wrestling, reading the magazines. My dad bought me some magazines and said, "Hey, check these out." He bought them so that maybe I could read a little bit more. And I read those magazines cover to cover. We would go to this was in Florida. This was in South Florida, so we go to 7-Eleven. He'd buy me a couple magazines, and I was just reading them cover to cover. I loved them, and I still have a lot of magazines back there. A lot of the as a so-called after mags.
I was there before After. He didn't even come in till like 71, early 72 as editor. He was one of the first to have a wrestling radio show. I've written some pieces on the history of wrestling radio, but I was there before Bill, and I worked for almost all of them. Obviously the ones, I think there's only 2 left in Mexico. Boxing. Lucha.
Boxing, lucha, yeah, boxing and wrestling, yeah.
Super Luchas, I think, are the only one remaining. AAA, which is now the hot promotion again, they've taken quite a bit of talent from Paco's group, CMLL, EMLL. But their magazine that they used to have is no more, similar to WWE's newsstand magazine. But pretty much all of, like back in your day, well, we still had the last remnants of Wrestling World. There was New Wave Wrestling. But prior to that, well, the Aftermags were Wrestler Inside Wrestling well before PWI was ever created. And now PWI comes out every 2 to 3 months. So it's a little frustrating. There's a brand new magazine that started earlier this year out of Canada. There's the two from Europe. Let's see. Inside.
What's the one from Canada? I didn't know about that.
Spiteful.
Okay.
And the first and second issue, I think, were only online, and then they finally produced. So I've been one of the feature writer photographers for all of them, but the first two were just online. And then I think they finally published the second one on through the fifth, or physical magazines. And then there's the two in Europe.
You got Inside the Ropes, right? That's a new one.
So that was the one. He originally started Wrestle Talk after Fighting Spirit magazine went under.
Uh-huh.
And then James Dixon is his pen name. That's not his real name. He left the magazine he started, Wrestle Talk. Somebody else took over, a guy named Jimmy there. And he started Inside the Ropes, which has, all of us, Napolitano, some of his stuff, Apter's writing, my photos, and more. And we only have, because Gong went under with a Yakuza scandal. What was originally, when I started working for them, they were monthly Gong, late 60s in Japan. They became, obviously, weekly or Shukan Gong. They went under about 12, 13 years ago, and now all that's left as a physical magazine is Shukan Pro, or Baseball Pro, which strictly covers, they have sometimes a little MMA, but mostly all wrestling. They did cover the scandal with Tito Ortiz quitting city council here in Huntington Beach, which was a real scandal. Don't get me started. It almost cost the city a couple $1 million because they're trying to do a recall with the people that want to replace Tito Ortiz when he quit after only 3 months with a not so liberal African-American lady. The whole city of Huntington Beach went crazy. It's a huge topic in magazines in Mexico and, of course, especially Japan. So, well, anyway. So are you getting, what kinds of things are you able to get on TV that we may not be able to get, or on the internet where you are that we may not be able to get in the States? Are you able to get some?
Actually, it's the other way around. A lot of things here I can't get that you guys get on the internet. But if I on TV, I can get CMLL. I haven't seen any AAA on TV. You can get WWE, you can get SmackDown, you can get Raw. I've kind of lost AEW for some reason. I've lost NXT. It used to be on the TV. I can't find it anymore. And
might be getting better. You might be getting the benefit
at some point I saw some wrestling like from Colombia. Not anymore. So, but I think the internet would be the best way to get anyone to get wrestling here in El Salvador. You
can join the New Japan thing and get all of theirs.
Yeah, New Japan. Obviously, you got to get the subscription service.
Yeah, that's become the internet's become the great equalizer.
Yeah, that's a good term to use.
But you may be getting the benefit of the bargain by not having NXT. By missing.
Although now they're destroying it, but now, if you can believe, I mean, people are getting canned left and right. Main event guys are. I think in
some ways the WWE is jealous of its own product. I think NXT was upstaging the WWE and putting on better shows than the WWE, better booked, generating better talents. And then when the WWE would take the next talent up to the WWE, that talent a lot of times failed because the WWE would WWE-itize that person. And in doing so, they would usually turn them into failures when they were working so well in NXT.
Case in point is Keith Lee, who now somebody said they're quitting there in creative because they want to turn arguably one of the nicest guys on the planet into a heel after they turned Becky Lynch heel that the fans aren't buying. Keith Lee is a heel. They've already jobbed and ruined him out. They've already ruined Carrion on Raw. Almost everybody they bring up, with the exception of Bianca Belair, they almost ruin from NXT. Far superior wrestling show. Everybody bitches about the 3-hour bore fest known as Raw.
So instead of making the WWE better, their solution is, let's make NXT worse. So if we make NXT worse, people will want to watch the WWE more because the WWE will look better in comparison to a worse looking NXT. Does it seem like that's what the WWE's logic is?
The logic was that Vince was upset that NXT lost the Wednesday rating war. They were on at the exact same time for the 2 hours versus AEW on the TNT network. NXT was on the same USA network, which is an NBC property. So they lost the ratings war, had to move it where the ratings bumped up to Tuesday nights, where AEW stayed on Wednesdays after winning that ratings war. And Vince allegedly got upset. And now the guy that he has in, this other Nick Khan, not related to Tony of AEW. Nick
maybe related to Genghis.
Yeah. He's gutting NXT. Talent is being let go left and right, like the main event guy who just lost to Kyle O'Reilly. I can't think of his name right now. He's an incredible talent. He's going to probably, like Bryan Danielson, go immediately and CM Punk to AEW, which is nuts on their part. And they're just going to have these jabroni, very green people for the most part on.
Well, there's always Bad Bunny.
No, it's on AEW. Or you're talking about Bad Bunny?
They can always resort to Bad Bunny main eventing.
He kind of disappeared, huh?
Well, of course he disappeared. It was a one.
He made his money and that's it, right?
The WWE forced him down our throats.
Dream of this guy. He was.
But you know what? What's interesting is that he's from Puerto Rico, and I know several wrestlers from Puerto Rico, and they were totally behind this guy. He's like. And I don't see it. I understand he's more in the this musician and all that stuff. He's not a wrestler, but there are a lot. You would be amazed at how many people were behind him. Serious wrestlers that are serious about their craft. They're like, that. Look at Bad Bunny right there. He's doing it because it's almost like they see him as some kind of example. Look, he's on WWE. He's on a WWE pay-per-view. First Puerto Rican ever on a WWE pay-per-view. And I'm like,
but Randy,
what happened to Pedro Morales? It's like he's gone.
And the Bariquas on a.
Pedro's a guy I knew forever. He wrestled all over the place. Main event in LA. He was actually a WWA champion in the 60s, well before he became Tri-WF champion. And the reason why that happened was because Bruno was exhausted. He was nearly in a plane crash in one of Vince Sr.'s private planes. He wanted to take a couple of years off to heal and rest. And so he first said to Vince, I want you to put it on my friend, and that was Ivan Koloff. And then the main thing was the transition for the 2 years to Morales. And Morales, anyway, that guy was a total superstar. And he actually, that was what was refreshing about that group, was there was a tier underneath Pedro. Other Boricuas were Victor Rivera, and then Manny Soto, the brother of Roberto Soto, who's a total icon legend, and not a guy you want to F with. He's sort of like Ming, Haku, Peter
Harley Race.
Guy, real legit tough guy. Roberto Soto, where Manny Soto is one of the nicest people on the planet, who used to own a bar in LA we'd go to after the Olympic Auditorium shows with Victor Rivera. So, and if anybody's listening out there that might know, I've been pestering my boss underneath Mike LaBelle, Jeff Walton, if this was really true. Victor Rivera supposedly was framed for selling drugs, did some jail time, and when he came out, allegedly, the rumor that we've all been told, including the boys, was that his wife murdered him. That's what we were told. But nobody, the last time we saw him, I was at a Cauliflower Alley in '94, and he was there in the back with Don Morocco, Steve Strong, and Mondo Guerrero. and they were all blitzed and pissing off Luthez because they were having a good time in the back, and Luthez, didn't want anybody talking while he was talking, and so he got all upset, ended the open bar during the tenure of his presidency, but we never saw Victor again. So anybody, please.
There's a story idea for you, Javier.
So you're saying he might be alive and he might not be, but no one knows where he is?
Everybody feels he's passed, but that was the story that we got, that his wife was so mad that he did jail time for something he really shouldn't have done, because he did not do. Mm-hmm. I don't know. There must have been more to that story. So anybody who might know, please contact this show, because the one guy that might have known is a wrestler who came in a little bit later from the Dallas.
And you know what? Even if you don't know, contact the show. Just contact the show anyway.
If you know something, they'll be glad to have you on.
It's still live out there, fans.
Al Madrill was a decorated pro wrestler. First in Portland, he went to World Class for Fritz, and then Mike LeBarrel, well, he was main eventing. And that was actually the third guy ever to use ring entrance music, after originally it was Gorgeous George with Pomp and Circumstance that Randy Savage in Tribute used as his in the 80s on. And then Buddy Rogers for a time used Nat King Cole's version of Nature Boy. And the third guy ever to use ring entrance music was Bad Bad Leroy Brown, the giant African-American wrestler, first in Dallas for Fritz, in Houston for Paul Bosch, and he came to L.A., and he was feuding with Al Madrill. So Al Madrill, who now swears off pro wrestling, wants nothing to do with it. He still runs a car mechanic place somewhere in Los Angeles. But nobody can get him to spill the beans on the Victor Rivera story, and he's the only guy we think that knows. If you remember Al Madrill, he was a pretty huge star.
Yeah.
So, Javier, I wanted to know, how do you come up with ideas for stories? What motivates you to write a story for Pro Wrestling Stories?
I just try to pick something that interests me. I don't want to talk about wrestlers that, if I watch them and to me they bore me to death, I don't really want to write about them, because honestly, this is supposed to be writing about having fun at what you're doing, writing. I want to. So
let me put you on the spot.
If I was working for a newspaper and they say write about the Undertaker, and you write about Shawn Michaels, and you write about Triple H, well, you got to do it because it's your job, right? That's what you're getting paid for. But in my position, I'm able to pitch a story. If they approve it, I write about it. That's the luxury I have.
Who is a wrestler that bores you to death?
Triple H.
It's 20
but
minutes.
he's not in the ring right now.
Without even thinking about past, future, present. If you ask me what wrestler to you bored you to death, and I know Triple H has an old school style. I grew up on the mid '80s style where the kick punches, a couple of slams here and there meant a lot. I understand that, but to me Triple H is just I'm sorry, it's just I change the channel when I see him wrestle. It's just not interesting to me,
Javier, let me ask you quickly, too, because I don't want to forget this. It's sort of along the line of Russ's topic. The whole Hector Garza family, the two great stars that are in there, could they have botched them? If you've watched Raw, could they have botched those guys? I mean, the one guy, Garza Jr., they put the NXT championship or the junior championship on him, the cruiserweight, whatever it's called in NXT, and he was fantastic there. And then they bring the two of them to Raw, barely used, they're jobbed out. It's insulting. It's insulting when superior talent is improperly used, and then lessers, get more spotlight or get more.
Have the Vikings to go, the Viking Warriors to fall back up.
But do you think they see it that way? If I mean, I really think sometimes as fans, we feel strongly about those kind of situations, but as wrestlers, if you're getting paid and that you're getting paid to do a job, whether it's winning or losing, that's the job you got to do that night. I'm not sure if they see it the same way. I'm not sure. I haven't spoken with anyone. I don't know them, but I know who they are.
The problem is creative, which
You
should
know,
not be called creative. The talent is working super hard. They're doing the best they can. But if they're not given stuff, I mean, how many times has Garza Jr. had a different character change? He was doing this and that. He was teaming up with Andrade and turning on him and not turning on him and all of that mess. And then he was the guy handing flowers to married women, rose stems to women he shouldn't be trying to hit on. And it's like insulting because this guy's an incredible talent, which we saw in both what was the name of Conan's promotion, The Crash, as well as AAA. We've seen him there, years back. He's incredible talent, and it bothers me.
and those are the instances where you really want to just switch the channel, just turn off. You just think, why am I watching this? It's like, why do I see this guy's talent? Why do I see it? It's so obvious to me, and why are they just doing these things to make him look like a fool?
Now,
they're just like a Hispanic audience. They have.
Well, he's there supposedly to maybe have a connection with the Hispanic audience, but this is the thing: when people say Hispanic audience, you can put like a Mexican superstar, and he's not going to mean anything to anyone in El Salvador. We don't really like athletes from Mexico in general, for the most part. Someone from Puerto Rico, maybe. I mean, maybe we can connect with them, but Central American countries and Mexico, there's always been an animosity. So in our case, in El Salvador, maybe we would actually connect better with someone in WWE who'd be like a John Cena, maybe a Randy Orton.
But Damian Priest, they're doing good. Yeah, Damian Priest is.
Damian Priest is he's from Puerto Rico, but he's like a character. He's almost like an undefinable. You can't really say he's from this country and I'm going to root for him or not. So he's gonna have success just by his own talent, because he's obviously talented. So he should be fine. But again, what would draw people here where I'm at would be a product, either a superstar like the WWE had in the early 2000s still, because we had a show here around, I think it was 2004 or 5. They actually came down here, and but it won't be like a Mexican star. It won't be someone from Puerto Rico. It won't be someone from Argentina. That's not going to draw the audience here, and it will have to be just an overall product that's attractive to watch. Something you got to tune in. That's the fallacy. I think WWE thinks they're going to just put in some guy with Latino descent, and all the Latinos are going to want to watch pro wrestling all of a sudden. It doesn't really work that way. If the formula was so simple.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah. It's not. In terms of MMA, you talked about that. I don't know if USC has ever had an event in El Salvador, or even Bellator, but since those are obviously real, legit, not worked finishes, you say those events are doing better. There's more interest in those than most of the work pro wrestling stuff where you live.
Pro wrestling here, the local promotions do what they can, but I really can't tell you that WWE has a big following here anymore. It used to be. My younger brother, my younger brother is several years younger than me, and he used to watch WWE 99, 2000, 2001. So he was actually watching wrestling when I stopped watching wrestling. He was watching a different kind of wrestling, like the Attitude Era, when it was at its peak. And that's when I kind of tuned out for a little bit, because it was very different from the wrestling I grew up with. So, but that wrestling did strike a chord with the young audience here. That one did. And it's funny, AAA, Mexico, CMLL, that really didn't really attract viewers here in El Salvador. People did like the WWE product when it was at its peak in the Attitude Era. It's strange. I know you would think that Lucha Libre would have to be have an audience in all Latin American countries, but it didn't really here. But the local promotions adapt a Lucha Libre style. So that's almost like a case study in itself. Like, why do you adapt the Lucha Libre style if fans, casual fans, were watching WWE, not Lucha Libre,
Well, because Americans probably simplistically think, oh, if they're from Mexico, they're going to do well in all of those foreign countries. And no, there are some very complex animosities.
If you put a Mexican wrestler against an American wrestler, we're probably going to root for the American wrestler,
No, I wanted to run by you guys just one of the things about what's going on with AEW recently, and that's this incredible influx of talent that they've gotten. I was thinking about it to myself. My job involves a lot of driving, so I get to think about a lot of things. And
keep your eyes on the road, Russell.
Yeah, thank you. Well, when it's traffic, bumper to bumper traffic, you remember what it's like in the Bay Area.
I never had a car in the Bay Area. I walked. Well, I was right in the city.
Hey,
I made up.
What's the bus? Is it the 35 Gary? I took that many times to Japantown to pick up my gong and Shukan Pro back in the 80s and 90s.
I walked, and I sell.
Kinokuniya bookstore. You know that bookstore?
Yeah, of course.
It's got all the.
Was it Kinikuya? Was it Kinikuya bookstore there?
They have. It's a major chain. They have. I've been to the one in New York. I've been to the one in Chicago. I think there's one in Florida and Boston.
Uh-huh.
There's one in LA proper, and then one in Orange County in California. But the big one, my favorite, was the San Francisco one, right on Gary at Japantown.
Yeah,
Japan. Yeah.
Back on the topic, which is that normally when you have wrestlers, quote unquote, coming over, they happen one at a time, and you get the wrestlers to sort of introduce themselves, work themselves into the storyline, and then you add another wrestler. And you add another wrestler.
Well, that's not what AEW is doing, and they push.
No, they're. I mean, this is like the Afghanistan invasion. Rescue. You have airlifts coming out of the WWE and dropping off plane loads full of talent at AEW. And do you think that's something that could hurt AEW by having too much to work in, and B, do you think AEW has the ability to absorb the storylines and make the right pushes of the right talent? Because you can't push everybody that just jumps into the Fed like this. You have to find some way to work them in. Or what do you think? How do you think they're going to manage this?
Here's the guy I was trying to think of before. His contract ran out and he dropped the match, the main event.
So let's hear from Javier.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Lano. Go ahead.
Ric Flair are AEW bound. I'm breaking that spoiler tonight.
Well, good.
I mean, I'm as big a Flair fan as anyone, but honestly,
well, he's not going to wrestle.
Well, he gave a couple of chops at the Triple Mania show, but I mean, Flair, come on, I don't know, man. He just should. I'm not gonna tell anyone to retire. Mil Máscaras is still wrestling, but what is Ric Flair gonna really make a difference in AEW? If someone would make a difference in AEW, it's gonna be Charlotte, not her father.
They're gonna have him manage probably like Tully Blanchard is doing, and Jake Roberts and others are doing. Vicky Guerrero.
I got all the respect for Flair. If he knocked on my door right now, I'd probably faint. I have all respect for him, but honestly, his daughter's more over than 90% of the talent out there. Whether you hate her or love her, that's what I mean.
Oh, here's the guy, Bryan Danielson. They were going to have him debut at the outdoor tennis stadium in wherever it is in New York. I think is it Long Island or the Arthur Ashe Stadium. But now they're pushing up Bryan Danielson to much earlier, and possibly even at this next pay-per-view next weekend to debut, because the mask mandate is back. I don't know how the COVID situation, I'm assuming it's not good. It's horrible in the U.S., but in New York at that stadium, they're going to force everybody to not only wear a mask, but show proof of double vaccination. And, I think AEW is worried that there's even potential something, that show might have to be postponed or whatever. So Bryan Danielson is going to debut very shortly and quicker than September, perhaps.
Yeah, well, no one's brought up the CM Punk. How much is it going to help AEW? He's not the CM Punk from 2004, 2005. I mean, how much he got a huge pop in his debut.
Yeah, but we just saw Bill Goldberg main event in the SummerSlam. So he's got a lot of. Yes, he has some tread on the tires, but I mean, when you talk about a completely four set of bald tires like what you have with Bill Goldberg, I mean, he has a long way to fall before he reaches Goldberg's level. I mean, let's put it this way. The last couple of years, he's really preserved himself. He hasn't gotten out of shape. I mean, it's not like he has a giant beer gut or something like when Dino Bravo came back after he did all his steroid stuff and he kind of went off of it, and you could just see all the water weight that was on him, and he was sloshing around.
It's amazing that CM Punk's lack of success in the mixed martial arts didn't hurt him at all. Didn't hurt his in pro wrestling. They've what as they say, the quote unquote haters are always going to bring that up. But look, CM Punk, people love that guy. They don't care if he got his butt kicked in mixed martial arts. They don't care.
Absence made the heart grow fonder, so they pop like crazy.
Is that because people yearn for talent? And someone who makes them really feel people really want to feel emotion in pro wrestling. Maybe like CM Punk, someone who's been gone for years, is filling the void of so many so-called superstars of today.
Yeah, I was mentioning last week that CM Punk and some of these other AEW guys represent sort of the corporation.
Well, that's why he left. He made a big point that he left because he was so unhappy and his spirit was quashed and all of that. His love for pro wrestling was quashed by being in the WWE. That's what he said then when he left. And 7 years later, when he debuted at that new Rampage show on the Friday nights now, their third hour weekly, that's what he said, that they snuffed out that love of wrestling that's now back since he's joined AEW. And he sees all that talent. Darby Allin.
Many Americans feel that way too. I think he's tapped into the spirit. A lot of Americans have had to compromise and do what they can so they could work for a corporation or work for a company during the time of COVID. And a lot of people have had to make a lot of compromises. And they did it for the last couple of years, and they're sick of it. And that they, when they see a guy like CM Punk saying that I'm, going to give my middle finger to the big corporations, he becomes kind of a folk hero in his own way. I think
Javier is absolutely right. He's going to have to prove it in the ring. We're winding down. Let's let Javier do some plugs. I do, before I forget,
sure.
I say R.I.P. to Sonny Chiba, the action adventure MMA star who passed away at 82.
Street Fighter man, right?
He was in Kill Bill. That's where Quentin Tarantino.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's a great movie.
Actor Eddie Asner finally passed, and it leaves only Betty White from the Mary Tyler Moore Show original cast. But Javier,
how did Ed Asner get in the ring? Oh, there you go. You have your.
I forgot to say that about Ed Asner was in Vern Gagne's movie The Wrestler. He actually played.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
He was in that movie and was at the opening of the movie at Grauman's Chinese on Hollywood Boulevard, with all of those wrestlers that were in that thing. Everybody, Dusty Rhodes, Dick Murdoch were in there, Bruiser Crusher, Billy Robinson. Oh, man, that was a terrific movie. And Ed Asner was like the lead guy that drew the non-wrestling folks.
Wow, well, so, Javier, do you want to, do you know what your next article is going to be in?
I'm in a little bit of a slump right now, but there's about 3 articles that are in the can, as they say. They'll be published soon. But you said we were going to talk a little bit about sci-fi, right, Russell?
Yes, please. Let's have a moment.
I'll just throw some
minute or
stuff
two.
on the camera, and you guys can talk.
Oh yeah, and I saw that in the theater, obviously.
You saw it in the theater?
Back in the day, yeah, when it first came out. Yeah, my friends are science fiction. Some of my friends work at ILM and are model builders. One of these days, I have to just have you on for a pure science fiction talk. I can tell you about my.
Here's a laser disc.
Oh yeah, well, I saw that in a theater when it opened, and that was also at Grauman's Chinese, where I saw that when I was growing up in L.A.
I still don't get it. I still don't get that movie. I've seen it a million times. Still
here's a different one.
Oh yeah, The Running Man.
Well, my godfather was in that, Richard Dawson.
Oh yeah.
Family Feud, but also Laughter.
He was their godfather.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that in another episode. His son and I, both of his sons and I, they would film and I would shoot ringside. This was in the early 70s.
And one last thing we need to get out of you, and that is a mission burrito or burrito from El Salvador. What's better and what's the difference?
Depends on where you go. Honestly, I think you can get a good burrito pretty much. If you know where to go, you can get a good burrito. You get a good taco. I think the key for a good burrito, a good taco, don't be afraid to have a little bit of the fat in there, the oil. Don't. I'm not saying
what's your burrito
I'm not saying put the skin in there, but it has to be moist. It has to have flavor. Has to be have condiments, and there's no such thing as a diet low fat taco, low fat burrito. It's gonna be has to have flavor. The condiments has to, and in terms of hot sauces, that could be a whole show right there. There's
what's your burrito order?
Let's get them back on and talk food. Forget about the I want to talk menudo and lengua and all the other bistec and all the other food.
My wife loves taco. Lengua is a tongue. My wife likes those tacos. I don't. She likes those.
Let's have Javier on and talk about it.
I'll have my wife here talk about how she loves tacos de lengua. She always orders that, and she's like, "You want some?" I'm like, "I don't like that. Try it. I know how it tastes. Don't give me that."
You don't want to eat something that can taste you back. I've always felt that. If
you want to taste something that is indescribable, ask for tacos de seso. Seso in Mexico is brain. Cow brain tacos. I can't describe the flavor of that. Honestly, I wouldn't recommend it, but I would recommend you trying it once. But it's no alligators like chicken.
Yes.
Cow brain in a spread is very strange.
Yes.
Well, folks, another great show. Thank you so much for being on with us this week, Javier. We'll have you on again, especially if you've got any big articles that are coming up. And
they're all big. They're all huge. What are you talking about? They're all huge articles.
That's right. Well, make sure to go to prowrestlingstories.com. Check them out on Facebook. And any other things you'd like to tell our fans for tonight?
Just prowrestlingstories.com. There's a lot of good writers there, a lot of good stories, and I have some stuff there too. Anything you read there is worth your time. You'll have fun. Just check it out, and I appreciate you guys having me back, Dr. Lano. I respect the heck out of him. I've read his work. I've followed him throughout the years. Through Evan and Russell. Big respect for all you guys.
Well, thanks so much for being on our show. We'll have you on again soon. Good night, everybody.
Buena suerte.
Gracias.